The most important question is, how do you get the gig? How do you get the gig? How do you get the film? Let me tell you a little bit history about myself. I had a successful electronic music career for a really long time. And in 2002, I had a #1 hit with a remix I did of Elvis, A Little Less Conversation. And in 2007 or 8, I got a Grammy nomination for a remix I did for Madonna. And I was here in town, and I noticed right away when I got here, this is going to take a long time. This is not going to be easy. I saw the work that people like Harry Gregson Williams and Hans Zimmer put into their work, how they knew everything about this profession. And I knew I'm not going to be able to score a movie just like that. And I felt like I need to learn a lot. I need to talk to a lot of people. I need to meet a lot of people. So I got here in 2003, and I struggled, and I struggled. My Junkie XL career was still going on, and that was going great. I was touring, I was going around the world, I was playing festivals. That was going really great. But as a film composer, nothing. I did this, and I did that, and I tried this, and I did demos for that person, and demos for this person. Nothing happened. And what was really interesting is that I wanted it so bad that it's almost like when you go to a bar and you want to pick up a girl, and it's almost like written on your forehead. You want it so bad that you're radiant in negative energy that it will not happen that night. And it was the same for me with film scoring. And I'm sure this is, everybody recognizes this, whether you're a woman or whether you're a guy. You walk into a bar just, to get a drink, and then you want to go home. And when you're not expecting it, you meet somebody very interesting. And this is exactly what happened to me with film scoring. So in 2008, I felt so down that it wasn't taking off for me. It wasn't happening. And I went back to Holland, and I spent a couple of months in Holland, and I was like, so what am I supposed to be doing? And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to go back to LA. I'm fine in Amsterdam. And I talked to my manager, and he said, just come back to LA for a couple of months and see how it feels. And if you really feel like you want to go back, okay, let's move back to Holland. So I came back, and I felt, like reborn, and I felt relaxed about it. And I worked harder than I ever did before in my life, way harder than before, but I didn't need it to be that film composer anymore. I was like, if it happens, it's okay. If it doesn't happen, that's okay too. But I worked so hard, but I was somewhat detached from the feeling that it needed to happen. It was like, if it's okay, that would be great. If it's not happening, life is still okay. And then the most interesting thing happened. Then, out of the blue, I started to develop this friendship with Hans. And in 2011, I started collaborating with him. And then I met Zack Snyder, and through that I started doing 300 Rise of an Empire. And through that I was able to work on Mad Max, and I was able to work on all these other movies. Like out of the blue, everything started taking off. So long story short is that you need to work really hard in my scenario, but I was okay with the fact that if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. And then I analyzed years later, just like recently, why did it happen to me? And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that I was willing to work really hard, and I was willing to work for another composer for a while to learn everything that person knows. And I think that's the key to getting a gig, is that you work from somebody that you really admire. You try to get a job with a composer that you admire, maybe multiple jobs with multiple composers, and you learn what that person has to offer to you. You don't need to necessarily like his style. You don't need to necessarily like his music, but every composer that actually has a job in town is a very valuable person to talk to. And that's what I tried in those years. because they have an input in that industry that you don't have, and they can teach you what you potentially should learn to get to that point. So for me, to be able to work with Harry Gregson Williams, with Klaus Badelt, a couple of other composers, and eventually with Hans, gave me not only all the knowledge that I needed, but also the network of people. I got to learn directors, I got to learn music editors, I got to learn people from the studio, I got to learn other people that are important in this industry, because I was working with these composers, and they were like, "Oh, hey Tom, how are you again? How are you going?" You know, so you become a familiar face, but it takes a long time. It took me 10 years. So you have to be ready for a long ride, and even at the end of that, you'll never know if you're able to succeed or not. And yes, you need to have some luck in the stars that smile at you, that certain things will happen at a certain point. And for some people it happens, and for some people it doesn't happen, but that's the nature of how this life works. I still think that's the best advice, how to get a gig, is to intern with a composer, potentially move to another composer, potentially move to another composer, learn, absorb, get to know people in the network, in the industry, get to know directors, get to know studio people, and eventually branch out on your own. And don't forget, when I started doing my own film, when I was 44, roughly, people considered me young. So think about that when you're 24 and you just finished studying film scoring. I hope that answers that question.